Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good to see you, sir. Good to see you.
A quick question for you both, and then we have a little bit of time for questions. We've been looking at TARP and all of the implications of that, and there's been talk of allowing certain media companies to benefit from TARP funding. And as the banks have learned, and people who haven't even taken TARP funding are going to learn, that with that comes government control. Have you all considered this from a legal perspective, or am I just coming out of left field on it?
It's certainly water cooler coffee talk that, geez, with all of the pressures on the newspaper industry and the broadcast industry, it's tough. There's not very many newspapers that are making money anymore, and broadcasters are a single source revenue stream. We get advertising, and when the economy goes south, the first thing advertisers do is cut their advertising budgets. Our primary three advertisers are: one, the auto industry, down 25%; two, home furnishings, down 18%; and three, home electronics. And with the loss of Circuit City, you can imagine what's happening into our advertising revenues. So we're down, the economy is down, newspapers are down, but to take the mammoth leap to say, okay, we're down, we're going to look to the public trough to fund ourselves is not certainly where we want to go. Because think about this, look at it from the bank's perspective. You take government money and you get government control. And the last thing I want is someone from the Media Bureau at the FCC calling me up as a shareholder and demanding that my news report a certain way. That's not what I'm looking for. And I guess more fundamentally, we look to the only example where the government does control directly the media, public broadcasting, and the last thing I want to do is turn the commercial broadcasting industry into PBS.
Any reaction to
No,
that?
I mean, I understand what Jerry's saying. I doubt that TARP money is going to be extended to the media field. I think that would be unwise and not a good use of our government funds. And so I don't expect that.
Even if it's dangled, the media, you think will resist the temptation?
I think Jerry has spoken there.
Okay, well, we have a few minutes for questions, and if you have any questions for our panelists, let me raise your hand now, or forever hold your peace. Yes, right.
You've talked around the edges of this. Of course, as a retired journalist, I'm concerned as I see our newspapers really struggling with economic problems. And then I see John Kerry stand up there and weep, over the demise of the Boston Globe and so forth, which I wrote for at one time. But anyway, the point is, would you like to comment on how the situation in the newspaper industry sort of feeds into this idea on the left of stepping in and saving the public, the public's right to know? Because that's the sense I got when Kerry last week stepped forward and commented about the situation in the newspapers.
Jerry, I mean, I could imagine a good argument to be made, though not persuasive, that, well, there's no local newspaper in Boston anymore, so we got to be sure that there's local news coverage, and hence the localism rule getting a little puff of wind behind it.
Yeah, look, the government's always going to look out for itself, and if Senator Kerry thinks that the Boston Herald is not going to be enough to replace the Boston Globe, I don't know where the government's going to come. Dick makes the right point. The government missed a very significant opportunity when Chairman Powell was the chairman to modify these ownership rules to allow broadcasters to own newspapers. Dick talked in 1975 about this newspaper broadcast cross-ownership rule that was supposed to increase diversity. And so Joe Albritton came into Washington, D.C., and he bought the Washington Star newspaper, an afternoon newspaper that was losing $1 million a month. He used the money from WJLA to pump into the newspaper, and he broke even. The FCC says, no, we want you to break that up. So he sold the radio stations that he owned to ABC. That improved diversity. He then had to sell WJLA or the newspaper, and he wanted to keep the newspaper. So he worked out a swap. He was going to swap with an outfit out of Phoenix that owned a station in Oklahoma. And Albritton was going to get the Oklahoma City station, and this outfit was going to get Washington. But they weren't equivalent markets, so Albritton was going to get some boots, something extra. And the something extra he was going to get was $55 million in non-voting preferred stock in the company that owned the station here in Washington. And the FCC says, well, okay, we'll let you do it, but we don't like it. So we're going to think about changing the rules. And oh, by the way, Albritton, if we change the rule, we might make it retroactive to you. Well, who does a $200 million deal on the strength that the egg's going to get unscrambled? So Albritton said, no, thank you, and he sold the newspaper that afternoon to Time Magazine. Time Magazine kept it for, what, a year or so and then shut it down. So in the name of diversity, in Congress's backyard, in the shadow of the FCC, we have a monopoly newspaper town. Where in the world is the legal thought that goes, or the policy thought that goes behind that unintended consequence? We missed a golden opportunity to change those rules, and Dick's clients, the Newspaper Association of America, is hurting as a direct result. Look, broadcasters and newspapers are going to morph. They're going to use their web content. Maybe there's a business model where we have micropayments for stories, the way the Wall Street Journal is looking at, and maybe the newspaper industry morphs into something different. We started Politico 3 days a week print. We really wanted it to be just a website. We said 3 days a week. We'll publish a paper. Now it's 5 days a week because there's a demand for it, a niche newspaper. Maybe that's how the newspaper business comes. Maybe there's a sports publication and a political publication. I don't know. But I think that the government has to be very careful about getting into ownership of the media.
Well, I agree. Any other questions?